With that, we have some awesome guest speakers who are here with us today from AXA XL. We have Tim Whistler, Head of Wholesale Solutions, and we have Scott Seagrill, Talent Partner. So thank you both for being here with us today. And Tim, I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for having us here. Spencer is such an incredible organization that we're thrilled to support with AXA XL. So thrilled to be speaking with you all today. Travis, I think you have the most go-to fun fact for the rest of your career, by the way. That's an easy one that you can always fall back on. But yeah, as Tandika said, I'm Tim Whistler. I lead up wholesale solutions for AXA XL in the Americas. We'll tell you about what that is more today, but essentially our wholesale solutions group within AXA XL includes our E&S business, which is the focus of today's presentation, and our programs business. So I'll kick it over to Scott.
Thanks, Tim, and welcome everyone. It's super exciting to be part of this and to see all of these very young faces. My name is Scott Seagrill. I'm a talent partner within HR, human resources, and part of what I do is I manage a summer intern program, which I'll go into later in the presentation. But we just wrapped up a really nice summer of 40 young talent. So a lot of you on the call remind me of the superstars that we just said goodbye to. So it's a pleasure to be here. So I work in the talent management space. So what that really means is I manage talent, which the title says. So really I work from the ground up with high school students actually for the first time this fall, and obviously a lot of college students. So I'm really excited to be a part of this and to meet all of you, and I really hope to stay connected after this call.
Great. All right, well, let's hop into the agenda and then get into the content. So what we wanted to cover today is give you somewhat of a comprehensive yet high-level overview of the E&S market, what it is, how it operates, and then certainly talk about the career pathways and the internships that Scott talked about. And then certainly we'll have time for Q&A at the end, but as we mentioned in the beginning, if you have any questions and want to raise your hand, don't be worried about interrupting us. We'd be happy to make this a conversation as much as the presentation if you have anything you want answered right away. All right, so let's dive into it. First slide. So I wanted to start at recognizing that this may or may not be your first exposure to the E&S market, and just give you an overview of what the E&S market is, how does it function, and really how does it compare to the admitted market. So first of all, I guess I've been told no acronyms, right? So I should define every acronym. E&S stands for the excess and surplus lines market. And the best way I could describe the E&S market to you at a high level is that it's a specialized market, a specialized segment of the broader insurance market that provides coverage for risks that might be unique, hard to place, and oftentimes risks with higher exposures than exist in the admitted market. Many of the product lines that we write in E&S are also product lines that you're familiar with seeing in the standard market: property, casualty, professional liability, cyber, D&O, and certainly a ton of specialty lines products like environmental liability. Just to give you a couple examples of risks that you might see and the difference in the risk that you might see in E&S compared to admitted. In property, for example, if you were to take a concrete building in upstate New York in an area with very little catastrophic weather exposure, CAT exposure, another thing, another acronym we use, right, or another shorthand, CAT, catastrophic. Take a routine building in upstate New York without much CAT exposure. That's a relatively easy to place piece of business that would pretty easily be placed in the admitted market. So that's an example of an admitted market type risk. And I'm obviously using here property for an example to start, but take another property risk that rather than being a concrete building in upstate New York with low CAT exposure, take a wood frame building in Florida on the coast where it's built of wood, right? So it has a higher fire exposure, but it's also on the coast of Florida. So it's pretty exposed to hurricanes. We're sitting here right in the middle of hurricane season, very relevant. But something like that is a much higher risk exposure. It's harder to place. something like that would make its way into the E&S market due to the nature of that risk and the loss exposure that's associated with it. To take another example in casualty, in E&S, think of anything from a casualty standpoint, which in casualty, as you all may know, that's going to cover third-party liability. A risk in casualty that would be a good example would be something like excess liability on a trucking risk or a really high hazard product manufacturer. And those are just a couple examples in a couple different product lines. But your takeaway here should be anything that has some sort of higher hazard or something about it that's unique tends to find a solution in the E&S market. So you may be thinking, okay, E&S, it's a home for more unique, more challenging risks with higher loss exposure. How do we do things differently in E&S compared to admitted, and why is it in the E&S market? And what I want you to take away here is the simple answer to that is that in the E&S market, we have freedom of rate and form. So the admitted market, all the carriers that operate in the admitted market, they have to be licensed in all 50 states they write business in. And part of being licensed means that they have to get approval for the rates that they charge and the forms that they put on policies to cover or not cover certain aspects of risks. So everything that's done in the admitted world has to be approved by state regulators in order to do it. The challenge with writing unique risks or admitted risks where the rates need prior approval is that those approved rates aren't always adequate to cover the higher exposures associated with those risks, or maybe they were adequate at one time, but as the world gets more challenging over a period of time, the loss exposure gets to a point where the approved rates can't keep up, right? So you then end up in a situation where the admitted markets cannot charge what they need to charge or can't put the appropriate terms and conditions on their policy in order to adequately insure at an underwriting profit the risks that are more challenging or unique. And this is really where E&S steps up and steps in to fill a void in the market and provide a solution for the more challenging risks out there. So freedom of rate and form is what I mentioned prior. That means that us E&S carriers, although we are still heavily regulated, we're not individually licensed in the states where we operate, and therefore we don't need approval from state regulators to charge what we need to charge or to cover what we need to cover. So in short, we have much more flexibility in the E&S world, and we can charge rates and amend coverage forms in order to adequately insure the risks that have something unique about them or something a little bit more high hazard. So with that, more flexibility than admitted carriers, able to provide solutions that otherwise would not be available for businesses or individuals, homeowners, for example, in high hazard or unique industries. We step up to fill that void and solve it. So I'm proud of that. I think, if you think about the US economy as a whole, it would simply cease to function without insurance. Most businesses out there do not have balance sheets that would allow them to self-insure their risks on their own balance sheet. So in order to be in business, they transfer that risk to an insurance company for a premium, of course, and that risk is spread to an insurance company across a whole portfolio. So if you think about all those dynamics I mentioned where certain risks just can't find a home in the admitted market because the admitted carriers are not willing or can't cover those businesses or individuals within the filed rate and forms. If E&S was not a solution, there would be no solution for those risks. So, I'm very proud of the fact personally that E&S plays a vital role in ensuring some of the most challenging risks out there. And it's also a very exciting area to operate. The one last distinction I'll talk about between admitted and E&S, and we'll dive into this a little bit more on the next slide, is just distribution. So the admitted market generally is a place where retail brokers go direct to the admitted market, and the E&S market generally is a home where it's accessible through wholesale brokers. You can go to the next slide. So distribution, right? Distribution, think about distribution as how a piece of business makes its way from a client into the insurance market. Said another way, it's how insurance companies sell their product. E&S companies in particular don't sell direct to customers. They sell through insurance brokers. So, and that's the case in many standard insurance markets as well. The difference, as outlined here in this graphic, is that, again, you look on the left, you see the insureds as the ultimate insurance buyer. That's your local business, your local construction company, your local product manufacturer, your local building owner, whatever it may be. They start their insurance purchasing process by approaching a retail broker. In the standard market, that retail broker, again, will go directly to an insurance carrier, buy insurance on behalf of that client. In the E&S market, we generally deal through wholesale brokers. So there's just one more step in the chain where an insured would go to a retail broker. That retail broker might explore options that are available for that client in the admitted market. And then if they cannot get a solution in the admitted market, they'll engage a wholesale broker, and that wholesale broker will approach the E&S markets and find a solution. You can go to the next slide. So I wanted to give you a little bit of context of what's happened in the E&S market recently, and then the next slide I'll talk about the why. In short, like, E&S has experienced absolutely staggering growth over the last 6 years, and it's grown at a rate that is far outpacing that of the overall insurance market. The E&S market really has been around for over 100 years. It hasn't been as prevalent for 100 years, but it really did come into huge prominence back to the 1970s. So it's not a new market. This is a market that's been around for a very long period of time. If you look at the chart here, the gray bar is that of the admitted market, and then the red box above that is the size of the E&S market, and these are in billions of dollars. So if you look at it, I think it's pretty interesting to see what's happened over the last recent number of years. So again, think of the E&S market being very prominent starting in the 70s. It started from then until 2018 to reach $50 billion in total gross written premium. And then just in the 6 years between 2018 and 2024, it reached 135 billion. So you see this chart, it goes up to 2023 when it was at 116 billion, but 2024 it hit 135 billion. So it really took forever to reach 50 billion. And then just in the 6 years after that, it grew more than 2.5 times from 50 billion to 135 billion. That's pretty staggering. It's growth that has significantly outpaced that of the broader market, which basically means that E&S has gained market share relative to the overall market and has become a much more significant portion of the overall market than it was previously. So if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about why. So I have 3 things here, and they're certainly not comprehensive. There's more than 3 reasons why, but I think these are 3 very prominent reasons why. So if you recall, in my opening slide, I talked about what E&S does and who it does it for. And hopefully a big highlight you took away there is that E&S is a solution for some of the more challenging or unique risks out there. The top 2 things on this slide talk about how the world as a whole is becoming much more challenging. So on the left here, you see the median of the top US casualty verdicts in the US. You see a noticeable dotted line there. That's to delineate pre-COVID and post-COVID. So if you look pre-COVID there, in 2019, the average of those top verdicts was $50 million. It decreased significantly in 2020 because of COVID. All the courts were closed during COVID. If they were open only virtually. So a lot of the largest cases in the US didn't get settled during COVID, and it took a little bit of while after COVID for that backlog in the court system to open up. But now it's fully open, and you look at 2024, the average of those top casualty verdicts is now just short of $100 million, almost double the level that it was pre-COVID levels. And notably there's not only is it double the pre-COVID levels, but it increased over 50% between 2023 and 2024. Now, these are just the top verdicts, but I use that graphic to just highlight a picture that overall the casualty environment in the US is getting much more challenging in recent years than it was historically. So again, that dynamic where E&S is a solution for the most challenging risks. As the casualty market gets more challenging as a whole, that's resulted in more and more business flowing into the E&S market in order to find a solution. I do see a hand up, so I'll pause there.
Yeah, so you mentioned how E&S is the solution to just catastrophic risk, but working in the E&S field, what do you think is the most unique challenges you faced, and how did you overcome it?
A good question. I think one of the challenges, I'll speak maybe for the market as a whole. I think with that staggering growth that I just showed on the previous slide and all the influx of business, that some of that is rate, right? So some of that growth is the amount of absolute rate that's charged on a business on a piece of business, but by and large, it's a huge influx of submissions. So one of the biggest challenges that we're having in E&S right now is just keeping up with that flow. So it's having enough underwriters, it's investing in technology, it's making sure that we're investing in middle office support to make sure that our underwriters' jobs are easier to do so that they can get to all the risks. But I think that's one of the biggest challenges facing E&S right now is just keeping up with the incredible demand that we're facing. And certainly it's about recruiting and training and developing your best people. And then, like I said, it's about investing in technology so that we get quicker and better at what we do.
Thank
Does
you.
that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Good. I see another hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do have a question. So, would you call this sort of sudden growth in casualty verdicts social inflation, or is it something else?
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, I think people use different terms, but if you're asking that question, you know exactly the dynamic that's driving that. The casualty world is very challenging. You have dynamics like third-party litigation funding, where there's private capital investing in jury verdicts. That certainly drives some of the increase. General behavior of juries is just different now than it was historically, and certainly anytime there's a large bodily injury case or otherwise, the crosshairs are on that company, and the loss exposure to big casualty verdicts is very, very real. And anything you hear that term, Jay, around social inflation, this is a graphic to help highlight that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see any other hands up. Okay. So top right here, this is kind of the property version of the top left, right? So I showed you what was going on in the casualty world. What's going on in the property world is pretty similar in regards to total insured cat losses. So again, when I say cat, I mean large catastrophic weather events. Think hurricanes, wildfires, tornadoes, severe convective storms. There was even a winter storm in the first quarter of last year that was a massive, massive cat event, from loss of power to the power grid and a bunch of frozen pipe claims, for example. So in any case, the important thing to follow here is that blue line. So that's the trailing average of the total insured losses from cat events. You see which way it's going, right? It's going up. And the amount of cat activity in the United States right now continues to increase year over year. And it's just, again, another highlight of what's going on in casualty with social inflation, and the average casualty verdicts is a very real dynamic in the property world too. So again, think of the dynamic where E&S is a home for the most challenging risks. Certainly any risk that has exposure to property cat falls squarely in that bucket as something that E&S is providing a solution for. And these are just two examples, right? Like we have limited time, so I can't go through all of them, but there's a number of different product lines outside of property and casualty that face very similar dynamics to the world becoming riskier for one reason or another, and E&S being a home. So therefore, more and more business is flowing into E&S and is creating that growth that I mentioned on the prior slide. The last part I mentioned here in number 3 at the bottom is just the prevalence of what the wholesale broker has done. And look, wholesale brokers today are very, very, very sophisticated and they add a tremendous amount of value for the retail broker and for the client. And I think some of the permanency of the growth that we've seen in the E&S market can largely be attributed to the value that the wholesale brokers have brought to the market. When the world became riskier and the E&S market grew as a result, the wholesale brokers didn't just rest on their laurels and accept it. They invested heavily in talent and technology and expertise and market access, and really have carved out a lane where they add a tremendous amount of value to the whole buying process. And when you think back to my distribution slide, that wholesale brokers are a key facet to the E&S market as a whole. As wholesale brokers have become better and better, I think that's been a big driver of the growth in E&S as well. All right, so that was mainly what I wanted to cover at a very high level on E&S, what it is, how it does it. And then from here, I was going to shift into some of the more career-focused conversations. I'm happy to pause for any E&S specific questions, or we can move on. I see one.
Hi there. Is it possible, or how do you stay ahead of emerging risks and trends in the E&S market?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's a ton of them, right? There's a lot of emerging risks, whether they're weather related or casualty related. There's a number that I could name, but it's the word I would come back to on that is collaboration. I lead an underwriting unit, and I manage a team of underwriters, but within the whole operation of any E&S company, there's actuarial teams, there's claims teams, there's a whole risk management division, and there are some people in many organizations whose full-time job is to focus on emerging risk and to make sure we stay ahead of them, right? Like, what's the next asbestos, for example? Those sort of things are very important to monitor. So the key word is collaboration between all those units, and constant communication between the underwriting teams, the actuarial teams, the claims teams, the emerging risk teams is key to staying ahead of that, because oftentimes if you aren't collaborating as an underwriting unit, you're not going to know about those risks until they start to show up in your losses. And many times it's too late, right? So it's a matter of collaborating with claims to see what they're hearing on the front lines, make sure that actuaries are coordinating with claims so that they can set reserves appropriately based on what they're hearing from claims, based on what they're hearing from underwriting in regards to strategy, and then certainly analyzing your company's exposure to any of these sort of emerging risks and see if anything needs to be addressed from a terms and conditions standpoint, for example, is very important to stay ahead of that. Any others? All right. Oh, I see one.
Yeah, I was just wondering about that graph. I was looking at it, and there seems to be a big change after COVID. What do you think is the biggest change over the last 5 years on the insurance industry?
Yeah, so that graph is casualty verdicts, and the main reason you see it drop off, like, I think that 10 million in 2020 is a little bit of a false signal if you were looking at it in isolation. I don't think it's 2020 certainly is not indicative of the world getting easier. 2020 is indicative of what happened during COVID and the courts being closed. So when courts were closed during COVID, or if some of them weren't closed completely, but they were open over Zoom, right, like this, none of the biggest trials and verdicts did not really happen over Zoom during COVID. So there was a bit of a backlog to wait for the courts to reopen, and that's why you see it start to spike after that. So I think, had it not been for COVID, 2020 probably would have looked much more similar to 2019, maybe slightly up, maybe slightly down. But the reason that it spiked is because of those dynamics that we talked about in Jay's question, right? The term social inflation, just generally speaking, the casualty world becoming much more challenging. And I think the current year's view is more indicative of what the reality is versus 2020 being significantly lower. So certainly like that increase would have been less steep had it not been for COVID, but I think you would have still seen it heading more vertically.
All right, thank you.
All right, I think we can go to the next one. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a sense of the different career paths in E&S, and I'm certainly happy to tell you about my own career path. It was cool in the intros to hear the diversity of people's positions and where they are. I think I heard some underwriting, a couple actuarial positions. So it's cool to see that. And look, I'm certainly biased, but I think insurance in general is just an absolutely fantastic career. It's where I've spent my entire career. I went to Boston University. I did not study insurance or risk management. I was not planning on getting insurance, but I'm so fortunate that I did. And I think you all are a step ahead, many people focusing on insurance while you're still in school, certainly. So there's many different ways you can take it, right? Like I come from an underwriting background, but again, many of you know there's an actuarial path, there's a claims path, there's many other paths you can take within an insurance company. If you think back to that distribution slide I showed too, there's also a distribution path where either within a company you can be on a distribution team that's focused solely on the relationships with clients and relationships with brokers, but you could also take the path where you go work for a client as a risk manager, or you go work for a broker as a broker, whether it's a retail broker or a wholesale broker. I talking about E&S, certainly I trade heavily with wholesale brokers and think that's a great career path. That's absolutely something that you could consider. My path personally, I was at Boston University, which is right in the city. I got an internship the summer between my junior and senior year with Lexington Insurance Company. It was a fantastic experience. I spent my summer interning there in the claims team. And then upon graduation, I went into an underwriting training program there and spent the first 10 years of my career on Lexington's casualty team in various positions. From there, I went to spend 4 or 5 years leading the architects and engineers team for North America. So that's professional liability for architects and engineers. Did that again about 4 or 5 years. Moved on to a couple different roles where I was zonal executive for the Northeast in New York at Lexington, managing all of the products that Lexington sells in the field for those geographies. I was the head of distribution for Lexington for a year. And then for the past 4 years of my career there, I was leading Western World, which is a small business focused binding authority platform within Lexington. So I spent the first 20 years of my career there. And then I've now been at AXA XL for about 6 months. So certainly you think about that career path, it's not that linear, right? I didn't just start in one division and move up in a singular division. I had opportunity. I was very fortunate to have opportunity to do many different things and learn many different things within the broader organization. So as you think about navigating your career, I would keep that in mind, that the path isn't always linear. I would say my first advice for you would be learn the product that you're working on, excel at your day job, be patient, opportunities will come to you. Everybody wants to know what's next, and that's perfectly normal and fine. But my advice would be fantastic about your day job, and you will be recognized for it. And that comes with a lot of learning. Network, that means internally and externally, build those relationships with your colleagues. They don't need to be in your individual unit. I would actually encourage that you build relationships with people outside of your unit. If you're interning or you're a first year underwriter in property, talk to people in casualty, hear what they're working on, hear what their challenges are. Be curious, right? Like intellectual curiosity. If you don't know something, especially earlier in your career, I can tell you when I interview interns or talk to interns, I really don't expect them to know a ton about insurance. It's totally fine. But what I do look for is that somebody has the intellectual curiosity that if they don't know something, they're asking the right questions, that they're researching it as much as they possibly can on their own, and then trying to solve it, right? And then try new things. I mean, I talked about my career path so far from linear. I was at my prior company 20 years. I didn't spend all of those 20 years in one product line. I had a number of different product line roles. I had a number of different roles geographically as well. So, again, try new things, challenge yourself. But I would say first and foremost, learn at what you're doing to the fullest extent of your ability, and you will be successful. I see a question, I think, Mia.
Yeah. Yes. My question is, from your perspective in the industry, what separates a strong candidate from the rest when it comes to a internship opportunity in insurance?
I think it's a mindset, right? Like, again, I think as I'm talking to early careers employees, whether it's interns or first year underwriters, again, it's not like I'm expecting an intern to come in the door and know everything about insurance, but I think what separates the good candidates from the average candidates is the ability to learn, the curiosity, the right mindset. It's a growth mindset, right? Like wanting to learn, being willing to learn, being willing to listen, being willing to take feedback and apply it to your job, and build off of it. I see
Great
Bryce has his hand up.
question. Yes.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
So this past summer, I interned with Displacement Services, and I just passed my property and casualty licensing test. Kind of looking back on your career, is there anything you wish you had known when you just started out in the industry, or is there anything you wish you had done earlier on?
Ooh, that's a good one. Look, I don't know if I would second guess. Like, I came in, you said, is there anything I wish I knew? I came in knowing nothing. So, I mean, maybe it would have been helpful to come in with a baseline. I think from that standpoint, you all are going to come into an insurance career knowing more than I knew, right? But like, I was lucky enough to be surrounded by great people who pushed me and mentored me and challenged me. I think if anything else, maybe early in my career, I would have done more of reaching out to people outside of my immediate department or outside of my immediate area of focus to learn more about other areas earlier in my career. But look, I'm not second guessing myself for it. I think I was lucky enough to be surrounded by a lot of people who taught me a lot and helped me grow.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Lucy? I think you're muted.
Okay. Yeah, I have two questions. The first one is, what do you think is the best skill to build for someone who's pursuing actuarial sciences, and is in their early career, seeing how the insurance industry is being transformed into like automation and stuff like that? What would be the best skill to build for someone?
In actuarial science?
Yes.
Look, I think technology is advancing pretty quickly, right? So
Yeah.
I think, whether it's AI or other technological advancements, I think somebody earlier in their career coming in with a really good understanding on the way the world is going from a technology standpoint is huge, right? And I think that will definitely help you add value. But again, I think back to learning, right? If you're going to come in and you're going to be an actuary, make sure you learn what you need to do well to excel at that job, right? And I'm not an actuary by background, so I'm probably the wrong person to tell you the exact, like technical aspects of that job. But certainly whoever you're working for or with will be able to articulate that to you. And just even taking that step of being curious, going to them, asking what you need to do, what you need to learn, and then actually doing it absolutely matters. All right, we have like 15 minutes left, so let me move on to Scott, and then certainly happy to take any other questions at the end.
Great. Thank you, Tim. And we can flip to the next slide. Great. So again, it's a pleasure to be with you. I think for the sake of time, I can dive right into the internship program, which I manage, which I mentioned at the beginning of the call. Again, we just said farewell to 40 fabulous interns. And upon hearing about a lot of you on the call, I know I heard some actuarial majors, finance, and all sorts of different things, which are really important and wonderful. And the timing couldn't be more perfect because we're about to post our very first 2026 summer internship roles. So this timing is just amazing. And I've been sitting here for the duration of the call, accepting LinkedIn requests from I think almost everybody on the call. Not that I was multitasking, but it was really wonderful to see that. And I think the most important thing to take away is that I should connect with all of you and give you maybe a personal overview of the program, depending on where your interests lie. But I think for the sake of this call, I can certainly focus on excess and surplus insurance. As Tim kindly went through a lot of different details about excess and surplus. We have three different opportunities in specifically in excess and surplus that we had this summer. And those interns, which I'll get to in the next slide, had a really wonderful experience. They were involved in a lot of different things that you can see on this slide. So first of all, the program runs for 10 weeks. It started in June, very early June, and wraps in the middle of August. So the timing is really good. There's a lot of different exposure that you get to a lot of different areas. And I know Tim mentioned curiosity, and I could not emphasize that enough. Even if you're sitting in an excess and surplus intern role, there's so many opportunities to go meet with somebody who's in actuarial, somebody who's in cyber, somebody's in human resources, somebody who's in marketing. It's kind of like a 10-week playground for you to explore all different types of internships. So the excess and surplus internship. So these interns were exposed to a lot of different things. I can start in the middle. So essentially they did a 10-week rotation with general liability, property, and excess casualty. So just that alone gave them such great exposure to excess and surplus as a whole. Other things that they were involved in during the 10 weeks, they were able to analyze current market trends, evaluate the competition in the E&S and wholesale market. So what they did was a lot of different research about competitors, about current trends, things that are happening, and then they brought them back to senior leaders, including Tim and others, and presented their findings in a final group project, which was not just a good experience for them as an intern and honing their presentation skills and research skills, but it helped us, AXA XL, to take away different information that we didn't even realize existed just from the research alone. So it was a very relevant project. And next summer we'll have another project. It won't be excess and surplus. It'll be a different area of the business. So really the whole point is that even if you're not sitting in excess and surplus, you get the experience of learning a lot about a specific business line. In addition to that, there's a lot of collaboration with other interns. I know when everyone did their introductions, there was a lot of different geographical locations where people were. The 40 roles that we have sit in many different areas. It essentially encompasses the Americas region, which consists of not only the United States, but Canada and Bermuda. And I saw something quickly in the chat. Somebody mentioned about international students. We do definitely support that with international students. They are allowed to apply for internships, And not just in the Americas business unit, which is the US, Canada, and Bermuda, we also have a United Kingdom-based internship program, as well as many others. So AXA XL is such a global entity that absolutely we support international internships. All right, so a little bit more about the internship itself. There's so many different events that happen within the 10 weeks. There's a series of meet and greets with senior leaders. Tim on the call kindly hosted one of them. They were also exposed to the chief executive officer of the entire AXA XL entity, Scott Gunter. They were also exposed to the regional CEO named Lucy Pilko. So very, very hands-on. This internship is not one where you're sitting there filing papers or making coffee or any of those stereotypical things for internships. It's very, very hands-on, and you get exposure to very top senior leaders. In addition, there were several broker meetings with clients and different customers like Aon, Lockton, um, Marsh. I'm probably forgetting one. We did an intern swap for a day. There's also a career development session led by my colleague Emily Lindley, who goes into different programs that we have after the internship ends. So it's not just a 10-week period where you're with us and then we wave goodbye to you and we never see you again. It's really the start of a wonderful relationship that we hope continues with various programs we have set up and in development, like underwriting, like risk management, like claims. So there's various directions that you can go in your career. This 10 weeks is just really a starting board for you to get exposure to a lot of different areas. We also provide an insurance 101 session so that you know a lot more about insurance. We're not expecting you to know much about insurance at all, but the fact that a lot of you are studying it is certainly helpful. We also do a really cool insights discovery personality session, which is, if anyone studies psychology, it's very color focused with like cool blue energy, earth green energy, fiery red energy, and really what your personality and work style preferences are so that you recognize it within yourself. And then you also recognize it with others. So I do see a hand up. Jay, did you have a question I can answer for you?
Yes, so I'm set to graduate in May 2026. Are there any timelines for a full-time early career, or is it just apply whenever the job is posted? How does that work?
Well, Jay, I would definitely say to apply whenever you do see a job posting. So if you go onto LinkedIn, that's probably the easiest way to find AXA XL and then various job postings. But it's a really great opportunity to start early. Even now is a good time. I know you're not graduating for 9 months, but we do have roles posted all the time, and sometimes we are willing to wait until you do graduate to fill that role. So great question.
Thank you, Scott.
Sure thing. Okay, and then just to quickly summarize, we also have intern cohorts. We have locations like New York, where there were 15 interns. We have Exton, Pennsylvania, where there were 6. We have Hartford, Connecticut, where there were 4. We have Chicago, where there were 5 interns. So part of the experience is building these relationships with other interns. It's a very powerful and wonderful development time for all of you. So having those connections with other people who are in the same location and the same stage of their career is really important as well. Okay, so I think we can just go to the next slide just to wrap up. All right, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. These are just testimonials that you can read through as I'm speaking from the three excess and surplus interns that we had who are all happened to be Chicago based. We had Connor Chittick, who came from Eastern Michigan University studying economics. So Connor has decided that next summer he's going to take an internship with a broker company just to get exposure to that side of the business. We have Maya Zatarsky, who attends University of Illinois, studying statistics. So with Maya, we're just about to extend a full-time offer to her to start in May or June when she graduates. And then finally, we have Taggart Neopomnic, who studies at the University of Nebraska Lincoln, and he studies finance. So Taggart is a junior, so he is set to return to have another internship with us in 2026. So all three of these interns had success stories in one way or another, and this is just the beginning for our relationship with them. So I think we can turn it over to more questions. Should anyone have any for either of us?
Yep,
See
Bryce.
Bryce
Bryce
has his
hand up.
hand up.
Hey Scott, it's Bryce. Quick question is that I was looking for like risk management roles in Chicago. Would this program be able to facilitate that, or would that be something I should look elsewhere for?
We should definitely have a conversation, Bryce, because we are developing more risk management opportunities, and we likely will have a risk management intern role in 2026. So I'd love to talk to you more specifically about that.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I guess if you're okay with it, I'll reach out with you on LinkedIn.
I'd be thrilled.
Perfect.
And hopefully you all had a chance to connect with Tim and Scott on LinkedIn. I'll pop their URLs in the chat box if you didn't get a chance to click on that. But we do have a few more minutes left of this session. If anybody else has any additional questions, please go for it. Go ahead, Krupesh.
Hey Scott, I'm Kripesh. I had like a similar question to Bryce regarding risk management. So I'm an upcoming student like majoring in enterprise risk management at Columbia University. I did my undergrad from CU Denver. So is it possible to like get your email and we can like schedule a call?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
I think my email is probably on the next slide, but if it's not, we can connect via LinkedIn and I can give it to you that way.
That's okay. I think I'm connected with you on LinkedIn, so I'll
Oh,
just
perfect.
text you on LinkedIn. Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
What a productive call this has been. All these connections already. It's amazing.
Awesome, awesome. And I want to make sure, those that have their cameras off, I don't know if you're in a space where you can say hello or ask questions, but I do see Carlos is here with us. It's nice to see your name again, but I do also see Robert, Emily. Is anyone else in a space where they have any questions or comments? Do you have any comments or feedback that you'd like to share with us?
Hi, everybody. I'm Emily Lindley. Sorry, I'm off camera because I have two little ones that are just absolutely destroying the room behind me, and I figured to spare everyone the flying ball pit balls. But I'm the Learning and Development Program Manager here at AXA XL, so I work alongside Scott and Tim very, very closely. And so, for all of you individuals that are interested in internships and potential full-time opportunities post-graduation, please, please, please connect with us. We are actually in a huge transformational growth mode here at AXA XL and are building out programs upon programs upon programs, focusing on claims, risk consulting, underwriting, internship building, and all of that. So by all means, we have a lot of opportunity coming and existing right now. So we'd love to connect and love to meet you and have further discussions. So thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Emily. And Nia has her hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, my question is a general question. It's what advice would you give your younger self when you was first entering the insurance field?
I would just quickly say learn everything you can. There's so many different areas you can go into within insurance. Just learn everything, meet with people, get connected, get your name out there. It really helps.
Yeah, I would absolutely. I mean, I said learn in my thing, and I totally agree with that. Maybe I'd just add to it, learn and be patient. Right? Like, hopefully you'll all have long careers in insurance, and don't get frustrated, be patient. I do truly feel and know that if you do spend the time in the early years of your career building that foundation and excelling at what you do at the time, that you will get recognized and rewarded. I think it's one of the beautiful things about the insurance industry is the amount of opportunities that will be presented to you if you learn and if you excel. So I just add, be patient, learn and be patient. You will be recognized.
I love that. That is fantastic advice. So with that, we are at time. So if you could all just join me in a virtual round of applause for Tim and for Scott, that would be awesome. Thank you both so much for hanging out with us for an hour and sharing your knowledge and your expertise. We truly appreciate it. So as summer is coming to an end, we have one remaining summer session before we switch to our regular scheduling of hosting these sessions on a monthly basis. So that will be throughout the fall and spring semester. So our next session is going to be next week, Thursday, August 28th from 1 to 2 Eastern. Our presenting company will be Risk Strategies. And our guest speaker is going to show us how to start with intention and grow with impact. So do take a moment to register for all of the sessions that we have remaining for 2025. Check out our website for more details. And for all the students that are here with us today, I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you again, Tim, and thank you again, Scott, and the rest of
Yeah,
the AXA
thank
XL
you.
team.
Thanks for letting us join. It's a true honor. It's a great organization. And for everybody on the call, I wish you well. Please stay in touch. I probably have like 15 LinkedIn's as I open my app too. So please reach out to me. I'd be happy to connect with anybody one-on-one as well. So thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks.